She texted, "Oh, my male bestie will crash on your side of the bed." I replied, "Right." Then I purchased a studio across town month to month and sent her a sublease offer for the entire apartment. When she saw the market rent line, she suddenly remembered boundaries. I, 32 male, am a creature of habit and quiet. My life is an ordered system of spreadsheets at my data analytics job, carefully curated playlists for my commute, and a home environment that I've calibrated for maximum calm. My apartment isn't just a place I live. It's my sanctuary, the controlled environment where the variables of the outside world are silenced. I was here for 2 years before my girlfriend Corinne, 30, moved in a year and a half ago. And for a while, it worked. Her chaotic energy as a freelance event planner was a vibrant color splashed across my monochrome canvas. But slowly, imperceptibly at first, the splash became a spill. It started with small things. Her friends staying over without a heads up, leaving a trail of glitter and wine glasses. Her habit of borrowing my noise-canceling headphones for her calls and returning them with the battery dead right when I needed them to focus. Each instance was a tiny erosion of a boundary I never thought I'd have to explicitly state. I'd bring it up gently, and she'd laugh it off, calling me her adorably grumpy old man, before kissing me, effectively ending the conversation without resolution. The frog in the slowly boiling water. That was me. Her male best friend Julian was the embodiment of this boundary dissolution. He was a perpetually between-gigs musician who viewed our apartment as his personal crash pad, kitchen, and lounge. His presence meant my preferred quiet evening of reading was replaced by him strumming his guitar off-key on my couch, helping himself to the craft beer I'd been saving for the weekend. I tolerated him for Corinne's sake, but my tolerance was a finite resource, and the data showed it was trending towards zero. The final, fatal crack in the foundation of my patience came via text message on a Wednesday afternoon. I was deep in a complex data model, finally achieving that flow state where the world fades away. My phone buzzed. "Corinne, hey babe, Julian's gig got canceled last minute and his flight back home isn't for another few days. He's gonna crash with us. Is it cool if he takes your side of the bed? I just know you hate being woken up and he moves around a lot, so it's easier if I'm on the outside. He'll be there when you get home." So I read it once, then twice, my side of the bed. Not the couch, which he had used dozens of times. Not an air mattress. My side of the bed. The space where I slept, recharged, and existed in my most vulnerable state. It was presented not as a question, but as a logistical notification. A decision had been made about my personal space, without my input, and the solution involved me being erased from my own bed. The casual smiley face and so felt like twists of the knife, a cheerful garnish on a dish of profound disrespect. A strange calm washed over me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the cold, hard click of a switch flipping in my brain. The emotional noise vanished, replaced by pure, crystalline logic. The data was in, the model was complete, and the conclusion was irrefutable. This wasn't a partnership anymore. I was a resource. My home was a hotel. My bed was a spare cot. I looked at her text for a full minute. Then I typed my reply. "Me right?" I put my phone on silent, face down on my desk. I pulled up a new browser tab. I didn't search for couples counseling or articles on setting boundaries. I searched for month-to-month furnished studio apartments. My criteria were simple: immediate availability, no long-term commitment, and far enough away that it felt like a clean break. By the time I left work, I had digitally signed a lease on a small, clean studio in a modern building across town. It was an overpayment, a ridiculous expense on my budget, but the month-to-month terms were perfect. It was a triage center, an escape pod. I went home, but not to my home. I went to the new studio. The key was in a lockbox as promised. I walked in. It smelled of fresh paint and disinfectant. It was sterile, empty, and blessedly, beautifully mine. I spent the next 2 hours in a state of clinical focus. I drove to my apartment. Corinne's car was there, and so was Julian's beat-up hatchback. Perfect. They were settled in. I used my key, slipped inside as quietly as possible, and went straight to my home office. I packed my work laptop, my backup hard drives, my passport, and a few other essential documents into my briefcase. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and filled it with a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, and the charging cables for all my devices. I took one last look around. My custom-built oak bookshelf, a piece I'd spent months designing and constructing, stood against the wall. It was my proudest creation, a physical manifestation of my love for order and craft. I felt a pang of loss for it, for everything it represented. Then I walked out, locking the door behind me. Back at the studio, I sat on the unfamiliar mattress and began to type an email to Corinne. I was a data analyst. I dealt in facts and figures. The situation had become emotional and chaotic, so my response had to be the opposite. It had to be a clear, undeniable, and impersonal business proposition. Subject: offer to sublease our apartment address. Corinne, per your text today, it's clear our housing needs have diverged. I have secured alternative, temporary accommodation for myself effective immediately. This email serves as a formal offer for you to sublease the entire apartment at address for the remainder of my lease term. As you know, the lease is solely in my name. The terms are as follows: 1 monthly rent, $2,850. This is the current fair market rate for a similar unit in our building, which is the standard for a sublease agreement. 2. Security deposit, $2,850, required prior to the signing of the sublease agreement. 3. Utilities. You will be required to transfer all utilities, electricity, internet, gas, into your name within 5 business days of signing. 4. Leaseholder responsibility. As the primary leaseholder, I will continue to remit payment to the property management, funded by your payment to me. You will be responsible for adhering to all building rules and regulations. Please let me know if you accept these terms by Friday at 5 p.m. If you accept, I will have a formal sublease agreement drafted for your signature. If you decline, I will require you and any guests to vacate the premises within 15 days so I can make other arrangements for the property. I believe this provides you with a clear path forward. Leo. I hit send. My hands were perfectly steady. I turned my phone off and went to sleep in a strange bed in a strange room, and for the first time in months, I wasn't worried about being woken up. Update 1. The silence lasted for 17 hours. It was a blissful, uninterrupted stretch of quiet that I hadn't realized I was so desperately craving. I woke up in the studio, made a cup of instant coffee, and worked remotely. It wasn't until around lunchtime the next day that I decided to turn my phone back on. It was like setting off a digital car alarm. A cascade of notifications flooded the screen. 23 missed calls from Corinne, 8 from Julian, 4 from her mom, Marla. The text scrolled like a real-time feed of her dawning horror. Yesterday, 8 p.m. Where are you? Julian and I ordered pizza. Okay, not funny. I saw your email. Is this some kind of joke? A really, really bad one? $2,850. Are you insane? The rent is $2,100. You're trying to profit off me. Today, tenant. Pick up your phone, you coward. You can't just kick me out. I have rights. Julian looked it up. My mom is calling you. You better answer. She knows a lawyer. The sheer velocity of the entitlement was breathtaking. The immediate leap to her rights as a guest in my home. The accusation of me profiting off her, as if I owed her a subsidized lifestyle. The deployment of her mother as a threat. My phone started ringing again. It was Corinne. I took a deep breath and answered, putting it on speaker. Finally, she shrieked. There was no hello, just pure, incandescent rage. What is wrong with you? You sent me a landlord email? What is this, Leo? It's exactly what it says it is, Corinne, I said, my voice even. It's a formal offer. An offer? It's an eviction notice, and you're trying to scam me on the rent. We pay $2,100. Correct, I pay $2,100. That's the preferential rate I received for signing a 2-year lease and having an excellent rental history. The market rate for a new 1-year lease or a sublet is $2,850. I checked. It's not personal, it's just the market. I could almost hear the gears grinding in her head as she struggled to process this. But I'm your girlfriend. You can't charge me market rate. The terms of our relationship appear to be under review, I said coolly. You made it clear my presence in my own bed was negotiable. So I've made our living arrangements negotiable. You have until Friday at 5. This is about Julian, isn't it? You're this insecure? He's my best friend. It was just for a few nights. It was about being notified that I no longer had a claim to my own side of the bed. It was the final data point in a very long trendline, Corinne. The decision is made. There was a muffled sound and then Julian's voice came on the line. Bro, for real? This is messed up. Corinne is in tears. You're gonna make her homeless over a misunderstanding? Hello, Julian, I said, my voice dropping a notch. Does this mean you're offering to co-sign the sublease with her? With your stable income? Or are you just enjoying the free accommodation while it lasts? Silence. Then Corinne was back, sobbing now. Leo, please, just come home. We can talk about this. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Julian can sleep on the couch. Just come home. It was the apology of a child who got caught, not someone who understood the transgression. The offer stands, Corinne. I won't be coming home. Let me know your decision by the deadline. I hung up. My next call was to my building's property management office. I explained I was considering subletting and wanted to understand the process. They confirmed everything. My right as sole leaseholder, the required credit and background check for any subletter, and the current market rate. The dirty tricks started that evening. A text from a mutual friend, Anya. Anya, hey Leo, just talked to Corinne. She's a mess, said you two had a fight and you just disappeared. Is everything okay? She's really worried you're having some kind of mental health crisis. The narrative was being spun. I wasn't a man enforcing a boundary. I was the unstable boyfriend. Me, hey Anya, appreciate you checking in, I'm fine. Corinne and I are having a significant disagreement about our living situation. I'm not having a crisis, I'm just handling it privately. The next day, Thursday, an email from Marla landed in my inbox, a masterclass in passive aggression. My heart is breaking for you both. To treat Corinne, who adores you, with such cold corporate language is deeply concerning. Don't let a moment of anger destroy something so beautiful. They were a united front of emotional manipulators. They thought this was a negotiation. It wasn't. Friday came. At 4:58 p.m., an email from Corinne arrived. Subject, offer to sublease fine. I'll stay. I can't believe you're doing this. This doesn't mean we're broken up. We are going to fix this. I'll get the money for the deposit from my mom. Send me the papers. I read the email. No apology, no accountability, and a chilling assertion that our relationship was still on the table. Phase 1 was complete. I forwarded her the building's official application forms. Now, the real battle would begin. Update 2. The first sign of trouble came 3 days after Corinne agreed to the sublease. The application form I sent her required proof of income, a credit check authorization, and references. Instead of the completed forms, I received a text. Corinne, this is ridiculous. You know my income. And a credit check? You're my boyfriend, not a stranger. Just tell the landlord I'm approved. You can vouch for me. The assumption that I would or even could circumvent the formal process was staggering. She saw rules as suggestions, things that applied to other people. Corinne, this is the building management's standard procedure for any subletter. It's not my rule. I can't vouch for you. They need the completed application to proceed. The deadline to submit it to them is this Friday. Her response was a string of angry emojis. Meanwhile, Julian was still there. I knew because a neighbor, an older gentleman named Mr. Henderson, who I occasionally chatted with, sent me a text about loud music coming from the apartment past 11 p.m. She was testing my resolve. Then came the attack on something deeply personal. I got another text from Corinne on Wednesday night. Corinne, OMG, I am so sorry. I was watering the new fiddle leaf fig Julian brought over as a housewarming gift and I tripped. Some water spilled on your big wooden bookshelf. I wiped it up right away. It should be fine. My blood ran cold. A housewarming gift? For a home she was being forced to pay market rate for? This wasn't an accident. It was a message. A petty, destructive little jab to let me know she could still hurt things I cared about. The last vestige of sentimentality I held for her evaporated. This was no longer just about enforcing a boundary. This was about protecting myself and my property from a hostile occupant. My response was immediate and methodical. First, I replied to Mr. Henderson, encouraging him to file formal complaints with management going forward, explaining it would be helpful. Next, I drafted a new email to Corinne, attaching the building's official rules with the sections on noise and property damage highlighted. Subject, urgent, lease compliance and property damage. Corinne, I have been notified of repeated noise complaints. Any fines will be your sole responsibility. Furthermore, regarding your text about the bookshelf, please send me detailed, high-resolution photos of the affected area immediately. The security deposit will be used to cover any and all repairs required due to negligence. If the cost of repair exceeds the deposit, I will pursue the remainder in small claims court. Finally, I am still awaiting your completed sublease application. Your continued occupancy is contingent on its approval. If management does not receive it by Friday at 5 p.m., I will be forced to rescind the offer and begin formal eviction proceedings. This is not a negotiation. The photos she sent back were blurry, but I could see it. A faint but definite cloudy ring on the second shelf. My stomach tightened with a cold fury. The predictable call from Marla came that evening. "Leo," she began, "I am shocked. You're threatening my daughter with eviction and accusing her of destroying your things over a tiny water spill. She is trying her best in a horrible situation you created." "Marla," I said, my patience gone. "Your daughter is an unauthorized occupant in my apartment who is violating noise ordinances and has damaged my property. The horrible situation was created when she decided my bed was a suitable place for her friend. This is the last time I will discuss this with you." I hung up. Friday arrived. At 5:30 p.m. I received an email from the property manager. Corinne's application was incomplete. The proof of income and credit check sections were blank. It was a game of chicken. She was trying to create a bureaucratic limbo, occupying the space without ever meeting the requirements. She thought she was being clever. I drafted a notice to cure or quit using a state-approved legal template. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that she had 3 business days to cure the deficiencies in her application or quit the premises. Failure would result in me filing for a formal eviction. I attached the screenshot of the property manager's email as Exhibit A. I sent it to her email and, for good measure, printed a copy, drove to the apartment, and taped it securely to the front door. As I stood in the hallway of my own building, taping an eviction notice to my own door, I didn't feel sad. I felt a grim sense of purpose. Final update. It has been 3 months since I taped that notice to my door. The silence in my apartment right now is absolute, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. It's my silence, in my space. The notice to cure or quit was the bombshell that finally made Corinne understand this wasn't a relationship spat, it was a legal proceeding. A predictable flurry of texts oscillating between tearful pleading and furious threats followed. I didn't reply to a single one. I screenshotted everything and saved it to a dedicated folder. She missed the 3-day deadline. On the 4th day, I paid the filing fee and officially filed for a formal eviction in housing court. She probably imagined a dramatic courtroom scene. What she got was a summons to a dry, procedural hearing in a drab municipal building. At the hearing, she and Marla showed up dressed for a funeral. Corinne tried to tell the mediator a sob story about our loving relationship and how I had a sudden breakdown. Then it was my turn. I didn't speak about my feelings. I simply presented the data. The lease agreement, solely in my name. The text message from her, notifying me she was giving my bed to her friend. My formal, written offer to sublease the apartment. Her written acceptance of the offer. The email from property management showing her incomplete application. A copy of the notice to cure or quit, and proof of delivery. The noise complaint email from Mr. Henderson and the photos of the damaged bookshelf. The tired-looking mediator looked at Corinne. "Ma'am," she said, "he provided you with a perfectly legal and reasonable path to remain in the residence. You accepted the offer and then failed to meet its basic requirements. He is well within his rights." The case was decided in my favor. The court issued an order granting Corinne 14 days to vacate. Julian, unsurprisingly, had vanished the moment court papers were served. The move-out day was tense. I arranged with the landlord to be there, along with a building security guard, to supervise. I didn't want any false accusations of theft. As she carried out her last box, sobbing for show, she whispered, "I can't believe you've become this heartless monster." "I'm not a monster, Corinne," I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. "I'm just the landlord now, and you were a bad tenant." After they were gone, I walked back into my apartment. It was a disaster, but it was quiet. It was mine. I spent the next week methodically reclaiming the space. I hired professional cleaners, I spackled and repainted the scuffed walls, and then I turned my attention to the bookshelf. The water stain was as bad as I had feared. I spent an entire weekend carefully sanding down the entire shelf, starting with a coarse grit and working my way down to an ultra-fine one. I reapplied the tung oil layer by layer, rubbing it into the grain until the oak glowed with its original warmth. The stain was gone. The bookshelf looked better than new. It was a scar that had been healed. I deducted the cost of the cleaning and repair materials from her original security deposit. I sent her a check for the remaining balance of $87.50 along with an itemized list. I heard through the grapevine she had to move back in with her parents. Her grand city adventure, subsidized by me, was over. The revenge wasn't in the eviction notice. It was in the quiet, methodical restoration of my life. It was in sanding down the physical mark of her disrespect until it was gone. It was in the silence of my reclaimed sanctuary. She thought she could take over my space with a casual text. She learned that every action has a consequence, and that the person who controls the lease controls the home. She wanted a dramatic, emotional confrontation. Instead, I just changed the terms of service, and she couldn't afford the new price.